The control room of Earth's Extraterrestrial Relations Bureau was usually quiet at this hour, but tonight, a series of urgent beeps shattered the silence. Senior Communications Officer Marcus Lynn, a middle-aged man with a reputation for his unflappable demeanor, sat upright, his eyes narrowing on the incoming transmission. "Looks like we've got a distress signal from the Andromeda sector," Marcus announced, tapping into the feed. The room filled with the crackle of the audio, and a voice, strained but clear, spoke in the common intergalactic tongue. "This is General Tyla of Zoria. We are under imminent threat from the Krath forces. We request immediate assistance." Captain Leo Mercer, who had been monitoring the night's communications from a back desk, stood and approached Marcus. "How credible is this?" he asked, his voice tinged with both skepticism and concern. "Zoria is a peaceful planet. They've stayed neutral in all major conflicts. If they're calling for help, it's serious," Marcus replied, adjusting his glasses as he reviewed the data streaming onto his screen. Leo rubbed his chin, his mind racing. "Prepare a briefing. I want all details on my desk within the hour." As Marcus coordinated with the data analysts, Leo walked to his office, where he dialed Admiral Hayes, the fleet commander. "Admiral, we've received a distress call from Zoria in Andromeda. They're being threatened by the Krath." The Admiral's weary voice came through the speaker. "Mercer, all our main fleets are engaged. We can't spare the ships." "What about the reserve fleet?" Leo suggested. There was a pause. "Fleet 17? They're hardly battle-ready. Most of those ships are due for decommission." "It's that or nothing, Admiral. Let me take Fleet 17. Another pause then. "All right, Mercer. It's your call. But you're responsible for this." "Understood, sir," Leo replied, a mix of determination and anxiety in his tone. Back in the control room, Marcus handed Leo the full report. "It's worse than we thought. The Krath are moving fast. Zoria doesn't have much time." Leo scanned the document, his jaw set firm. "Gather the crew for Fleet 17. We leave at 0600. The next morning, the hangar buzzed with activity as the crew assembled. Among them was Lieutenant Jax, known for his hotshot flying skills and reckless bravery. He approached Leo, who was overseeing the preparations. "Captain Mercer, huh? Heard a lot about you. They say you're one of the best strategists we have," Jax said, offering his hand. Leo shook it, eyeing the young pilot. "I hope you're as good as they say, Lieutenant. We'll need every bit of skill you have." As they walked toward the aging flagship, Leo briefed him on their mission. "Our objective is clear. We aid Zoria and neutralize the Krath threat. It's a long shot, but it's what we have." Jax nodded, his face serious. "We'll make it work, Captain. We have to." With the crew aboard, the engines of the old ships roared to life. They might have been the weakest fleet Earth had to offer, but under Leo's command, they were ready to face whatever awaited them in the depths of space. As the ships lifted off, leaving Earth's atmosphere behind, Leo couldn't help but feel the weight of the many lives, both human and Zolorian, resting on his decision. He turned to Jax, who was already at the controls. "Let's show them what Fleet 17 can do," he said, a firm resolve in his voice. Jax grinned, punching coordinates into the nav system. "Let's make some history, Captain." The hangar deck of the USS Endeavour, the flagship of Fleet 17, was abuzz with a mix of anticipation and unease as the final preparations were underway. Captain Leo Mercer walked the length of the ship, inspecting the readiness of his crew and the condition of the vessel, his steps echoing on the metal floor. Beside him was First Officer Dan Reed, a seasoned veteran with decades of service but with a career that had never quite reached the top echelons. "These old birds have seen better days," Dan remarked, patting the hull of an interceptor. "But they'll hold together. They have to." Leo nodded, his gaze lingering on a crew member tightening some bolts. "Gather the senior officers in 10. It's time we align our strategies." In the cramped briefing room, Leo stood at the head of the table, facing his team. Jax was there, along with Chief Engineer Mia Song, a woman known for her miracle work on engines thought long past their prime, and Tactical Officer Simon Key, whose strategies were as sharp as they were unconventional. "All right, everyone," Leo began, his voice carrying a calm authority. "Our mission is clear, but our path is fraught with danger. We're going up against the Krath with ships that are outmatched and outdated. Our advantage will be our ingenuity and our ability to anticipate our enemy's moves." Simon leaned forward, interjecting. "The Krath rely heavily on their superior firepower and armors. If we can outmaneuver them, exploit their overconfidence, we might just pull this off." Mia added, "I've rigged our shields to cycle through modulation frequencies faster than standard." It won't stop a direct hit, but it should help us stay off their targeting systems a bit longer. Jax grinned. Give me a slingshot, and I'll take down Goliath. Just point me in the right direction, Captain. Dan watched the interactions with a critical, yet hopeful eye. We also need to consider the morale of the crew. This isn't just about surviving, it's about believing we can win. Leo acknowledged this with a nod. Exactly. Let's not just fly this mission, let's lead it. I want every member of this fleet to know what they're fighting for. Freedom, peace, the chance to make a difference. As the meeting concluded, the officers dispersed to relay the strategies to their teams. Leo and Jax walked back to the bridge where the vastness of space awaited them. Jax looked over to Leo. Think they bought it? The part about making a difference? Leo glanced at the young pilot, his expression serious yet thoughtful. They need to, Jax. Hope can be as powerful a weapon as any plasma cannon in our arsenal. The journey through space was tense, with each jump bringing them closer to Zoria and the looming threat of the Krath. During a routine systems check, an alarm blared suddenly from the console. Jax and Leo rushed over to the navigation officer who was frantically trying to stabilize the readings. We've got a gravitational anomaly ahead, sir. It's pulling us off course, the officer reported, his voice tinged with panic. Mia, who had come to the bridge to deliver an update, jumped into action. Divert power from non-essential systems. Redirect to inertial dampeners. I'll go down to engineering and manually adjust the thrust vectors. As the ship shuddered, Leo took the helm beside Jax. Let's navigate this together, Lieutenant. Show me that slingshot maneuver you're so proud of. With a nod, Jax took control, his hands steady despite the vibrations shaking the ship. Hang on, Captain. This is going to get a little tricky. Together, they steered the fleet through the anomaly, the ships groaning under the stress but holding together, just as Dan had promised. As they emerged on the other side, the crew breathed a collective sigh of relief. Leo turned to Jax, a small smile breaking his stern demeanor. Well done, Lieutenant. Let's keep this momentum going. With their confidence bolstered by surviving their first unforeseen test, Fleet 17 continued towards Zoria, ready to face the Krath and defend a world that wasn't their own, but whose fate was now irrevocably tied to theirs. As Fleet 17 emerged from hyperspace, the serene blue and green orb of Zoria spun peacefully in the void, belying the desperate situation on its surface. The Zolorian defensive satellites and stations, once gleaming symbols of advanced technology, now appeared dim and battered, scars from recent skirmishes evident even from a distance. Captain Leo Mercer stood at the helm of the USS Endeavour, observing the planet through the viewscreen. Beside him, Lieutenant Jax checked their coordinates, his eyes flicking between the readouts and the looming planet. Entering Zolorian airspace, Jax announced, his voice steady. No immediate threats detected, but I'm keeping our scanners on high alert. Leo nodded, turning to his communications officer. Open a channel to Zolorian Command. Let's introduce ourselves. The officer nodded, working quickly. Channel open, Captain. This is Captain Leo Mercer of the Earth Alliance Fleet 17, responding to your distress call. Leo began, his voice projecting calm authority. After a brief silence, a reply crackled through. This is General Tyla of Zoria. We didn't expect help to come so swiftly or in such a form. The underlying tone of doubt was not lost on Leo. We may not be the fleet you expected, General, but we're here to assist in any way we can. General Tyla's image flickered onto the screen, revealing a middle-aged man with sharp features and weary eyes. Your presence is a surprise, Captain Mercer. We anticipated a larger force. Jax whispered to Leo. Seems they're sizing us up, Captain. Leo gave a reassuring nod before replying. Our ships are older, General, but they're manned by Earth's finest. Tell us the situation. Tyla sighed, his posture stiffening. The Krath have launched relentless attacks in the last few weeks. Our defenses are faltering and our people are in peril. Any assistance you can provide would be invaluable. Leo turned to his crew, signaling them to record every detail. We need specifics about the Krath's tactics and your defensive capabilities. General Tyla nodded, directing his aide to send over the data. I'll arrange for your team to meet with our strategists. Despite your fleet's modest appearance, we are grateful for Earth's intervention. Thank you, General. We'll coordinate with your team and start planning immediately. Leo responded, the transmission ending with a mutual nod of respect. Once the communication was cut, Dan Reed approached Leo, his expression concerned. We're really stepping into a hornet's nest here, Captain. Are we sure about this? Leo's gaze returned to the planet below. We have to be, Dan. There's no turning back now. The next hours were a flurry of activity as Fleet 17 coordinated with Zolorian forces. Captain Mercer and his senior officers, including Jax and Dan, disembarked to meet with Zolorian military leaders in a war room that had clearly seen better days. General Tyler greeted them personally, his handshake firm. Your arrival has given us a glimmer of, let's say, unexpected optimism. Leo introduced his team, then they got down to business, poring over maps and digital displays showing troop movements and craft positions. Jax, leaning over a tactical display with a Zolorian officer, couldn't help but ask, "How have you held out so long against such odds?" The Zolorian officer, a tall woman with sharp eyes, replied, "We fight for our home, our families. It's that simple." As the meeting drew to a close, Leo outlined their initial plan. "We'll start with small surgical strikes against the craft positions to test their responses. We need to understand their tactics before we can make a significant impact." General Tyler nodded approvingly. "A wise approach, Captain. We're at your disposal." As the Earth officers returned to their fleet, there was a newfound sense of purpose among them. They were under-equipped and outnumbered, but as they looked down on Zoria, they knew they had something worth fighting for. Not just a mission, but a people and a planet that now depended on them. Jax summed up the sentiment as they boarded their shuttle back to the fleet. "Looks like we're not just here to make a stand, Captain. We're here to make a difference." Leo smiled slightly, feeling the weight of their responsibility. "Let's make sure it's a difference for the better, Lieutenant. For Zoria and for us." Back aboard the USS Endeavour, Captain Leo Mercer convened an urgent strategy session with his senior officers and Zolorian liaisons via secure transmission. The atmosphere was tense. Everyone understood the gravity of devising a plan that could contend with the Krath's overwhelming firepower. Leo began the meeting with a firm tone. "Our initial assessments show that the Krath's technology is advanced, but their tactics are predictable. They rely heavily on brute force and frontal assaults." Lieutenant Jax chimed in, "Which means they might underestimate more cunning maneuvers. We can use that." Chief Engineer Mia Song brought up the schematics on the screen. "I've been analyzing their attack patterns and our fleet capabilities. If we retrofit some of our torpedoes with delayed fuses and decoy signals, we could mimic the signatures of their ships. It might confuse their sensors long enough for us to strike." Simon Key, the tactical officer, leaned forward, intrigued by Mia's proposal. "A feint within a feint. I like it. We draw them into a predefined kill zone, then hit them where it hurts." General Tyler, appearing on screen from Zoria, nodded thoughtfully. "Your approach offers an edge, but we need to consider the risk of the Krath adapting mid-engagement. They learn quickly." "That's a valid concern," Leo acknowledged, "which is why we'll need to keep our tactics flexible. Adaptability will be our mainstay." Dan Reed, ever the voice of caution, added, "We also need to protect Zoloria's remaining defenses. Any major offensive could provoke the Krath into a retaliatory strike that could decimate what's left of their infrastructure." Leo addressed this. "We'll deploy dummy fleets, old drones and decoys that can mimic our heat signatures and movements. While they chase ghosts, we strike in small, agile teams." The room fell silent as the weight of the plan settled on everyone's shoulders. After a moment, Jax broke the silence. "It's risky, it's bold, and I think it just might work." Mia looked around, her expression one of cautious optimism. "It's going to require precise timing and coordination. Every second will count." With the strategy set, Leo concluded, "Let's prepare for deployment. We have a few hours to make the necessary modifications. I want everyone sharp and ready." As the officers dispersed to carry out their tasks, Leo stayed behind, reviewing the details of the plan. Each element had to work flawlessly. There was no room for error. The hours passed quickly as the fleet prepared for the impending battle. Mia and her engineering team worked tirelessly to modify the torpedoes and enhance the decoy systems. Meanwhile, Jax coordinated with the Zolorian pilots, briefing them on the unconventional tactics that Fleet 17 was introducing. Night had fallen by the time the fleet was ready. In the dim light of the bridge, Leo watched as the ships took their positions. He turned to his communications officer. "Send the signal. Let's start the operation." As the first decoys launched, mimicking the signatures of Fleet 17's ships, sensors picked up Krath movements heading towards the false signals. Jax, now at the helm of a small strike craft, felt the adrenaline pumping as he dove into the fray, followed closely by Zolorian fighters. All right, team, remember, hit and run. Let's dance around them. The first explosions lit up the void as Krath's ships, confused and off balance, fired on the decoys. Taking advantage of the chaos, Leo directed the real strike force into the kill zone. Now, hit them hard and fast. What followed was a dance of death and daring in the void, as human and Zolorian pilots pushed their ships to the limits. The Krath, realizing too late that they had been duped, scrambled to mount a defense. Back on the Endeavor, Leo watched the battle unfold, every report, every burst of static over the comms adding to the high stakes. But as the tide of the battle began to turn, a glimmer of hope spread across his features. "We're doing it," he muttered under his breath. "We're actually doing it." By the time the sun rose over Zoria, the Krath had retreated, their numbers diminished, and their morale shattered. Leo allowed himself a small smile. The battle was far from over, but they had won this day, and with it, a crucial victory for the beleaguered planet of Zoria. Following their initial victory, Captain Leo Mercer convened a strategy meeting aboard the USS Endeavor. The mood was cautiously optimistic, but Leo knew that the Krath would retaliate with even greater force. "We've bought ourselves some time, but the Krath won't be licking their wounds for long," Leo stated, addressing his team and their Zolorian allies. "They'll be back, and in greater numbers." Lieutenant Jax, still exhilarated from their recent engagement, leaned forward. "We need to use every advantage we have. The nebula in Sector 47X could be our next battleground. Its dense gas clouds could cripple their sensors and give us the edge." Mia Song, reviewing the nebula's properties on her datapad, nodded in agreement. The electromagnetic turbulence alone could disable the Krath's advanced targeting systems, leveling the playing field. Simon Key, tapping at his tactical display, added, "If we lure them in, we can use the environment to our advantage. It's risky, but it's the best chance we have to inflict significant damage." General Tyla, connected via hologram, considered their proposal. "My forces will follow your lead, Captain Mercer. Your tactics have proven effective thus far." With the plan set, Fleet 17 and the Zolorian ships moved towards the nebula. As they approached, the space around them began to shimmer with the charged particles of the nebula, casting eerie lights across the hulls of their ships. Leo stood on the bridge, watching the stars blur into streaks of color. "All ships, maintain close formation. Navigation systems will be compromised inside the nebula. We stick together." Jax piloted the lead fighter, his eyes squinting through the swirling mists of the nebula. "Feels like flying blind in a storm," he muttered, adjusting his instruments to manual as automatic systems started flickering under the electromagnetic interference. The Krath, predictably aggressive, pursued them into the nebula. Their initial formations were tight and disciplined, but as their sensors began to fail, confusion spread through their ranks. "Now," Leo commanded, his voice resolute. "Execute attack pattern Delta." Zolorian and Earth fighters broke formation, darting through the nebula's clouds like phantoms. They struck at Krath ships, now isolated and disoriented, their usual coordination gone. Explosions lit up the nebula, each blast illuminating the gas clouds in bright, fleeting bursts. Mia and her engineering team monitored the fleet's systems, making real-time adjustments to compensate for the nebula's effects. "Keep the power rerouted to shields and weapons. Let's not lose anyone to this nebula," she instructed her team. As the battle raged, Leo received a distress call from one of the Zolorian vessels, its engines failing. "Captain, we need immediate assistance." Recognizing the voice as General Tyla's, Leo responded without hesitation. "Hang tight, General. We're on our way." Jax and a squadron of fighters provided cover as a rescue team, led by Dan Reed, maneuvered to tow the crippled Zolorian ship to safety. "You're not getting left behind, not on my watch," Dan shouted over the comm, his team working frantically to secure the vessel. With the Zolorian ship in tow, the fleet used the last of the nebula's cover to retreat. Behind them, the Krath, unable to pursue effectively within the nebula, fell back, their formations broken. Back on the Endeavor, Leo watched as the fleet emerged from the nebula, battered but not beaten. He turned to his crew, a grim smile on his face. "Well done, everyone. We've shown them that we're not just an annoyance. We're a threat." As the fleet regrouped, the cost of their daring maneuver became apparent. Several ships bore scars from the battle, and casualty reports began to filter in. Yet amidst the losses, there was a sense of victory and a deepening resolve. "We'll mourn our losses," Leo declared to his crew, "but let's also celebrate our survival and our courage. Rest up and prepare. This war is far from over, but today, we've proven that even in the darkest clouds, we can find our way. In the aftermath of the Nebula battle, Captain Leo Mercer reviewed the status of Fleet 17 and their Zolorian allies. The confrontation had left both sides bruised but not broken, and Leo knew the Krath would not allow them much time to recover. Gathering his senior officers aboard the USS Endeavour, Leo's expression was one of quiet determination. The Krath are regrouping faster than we anticipated. We've dealt them significant blows, but now we must prepare for their counterattack, he briefed, his eyes scanning the room. Lieutenant Jax, now seasoned by the fires of combat, responded, "We've shown them we can hit back. It's time to prepare for the next wave." Mia Song, who had been tirelessly working on shoring up the fleet's defenses, added, "I've upgraded our shield modulation and reinforced critical systems. We'll be ready to take whatever they throw at us." Simon Key, his tactical displays glowing with projections, suggested a new strategy. "We should consider a defensive stance. Let them come to us where we choose the ground. The asteroid field near Zoria offers a tactical advantage." Leo nodded in agreement. "Good thinking, Simon. We'll set a trap. The asteroid field will limit the Krath's maneuverability, giving us the upper hand." The plan was swiftly put into action. Fleet 17, along with Zolorian vessels, moved to the asteroid field, arranging their forces to create a lethal labyrinth of natural and artificial hazards. As they settled into position, the silence of space was a stark contrast to the tension aboard each ship. The wait was not long. Krath warships, hungry for revenge, entered the asteroid field, their confidence making them careless. As they navigated the hazardous terrain, Leo gave the order, "Hold until they are fully engaged within the field." Jax, piloting a nimble fighter, watched as the Krath ships grew closer. "Just a little closer," he murmured, fingers itching at the controls. When the Krath fleet was deeply ensnared, Leo's voice crackled over the comm. "All units, engage at will." The battle erupted in earnest, with Zolorian and Earth ships unleashing everything they had. The Krath, caught off guard by the ferocity and complexity of the ambush, struggled to organize a coherent response. Jax and his squadron darted between asteroids, leading Krath fighters into collisions or setting them up for direct hits from hidden batteries. Mia's enhanced shields held strong, protecting the fleet from stray debris and enemy fire. As the battle wore on, the Krath's initial order broke down into chaos. Their ships, unable to support each other effectively, were picked off one by one. The turning point came when a major Krath cruiser, damaged by an asteroid collision, drifted into the line of fire of the Endeavour's main cannons. Leo, seeing the opportunity, commanded, "Focus all fire on that cruiser." With a concerted barrage, the cruiser was destroyed, sending a clear message to the remaining Krath forces. The morale of the Krath fleet plummeted, and their organized resistance began to crumble. General Tyla, witnessing the disarray of the enemy from his command ship, felt a surge of hope. "This is it, Captain Mercer. We've got them on the run." Leo, while cautious, allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. "Keep pressing, everyone. Today, we turn the tide." As the last of the Krath ships retreated from the asteroid field, the victory was palpable. Fleet 17 and the Zolorian ships, though scarred and battered, had survived and triumphed over a formidable foe. On the bridge of the Endeavour, Leo addressed his crew, his voice filled with pride. "Today, you all proved that courage and strategy trump brute strength. We've not just defended Zoria, we've protected our honor and our future." As cheers erupted around him, Leo's thoughts turned to the future. The battle was won, but the war was not over. Yet, this victory was a decisive step towards peace, and under his command, humanity and Zoria had forged a bond that would not easily be broken. He knew that together, they were ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. In the silence that followed their monumental victory in the asteroid field, Captain Leo Mercer and the crew of Fleet 17 gathered to assess their status and plan their next steps. Despite their success, the war with the Krath was far from over. Intelligence reports suggested the Krath were massing for a final, desperate assault on Zoria, potentially overwhelming in scale. Leo stood before his officers in the strategy room aboard the USS Endeavour, his face a mask of determination. "We've pushed the Krath back, but they're gathering for another strike. This next battle could decide the fate of Zoria. We need to be ready to end this once and for all." Lieutenant Jax, ever eager, leaned in. "Let's give them a welcome they won't forget. We have the momentum. Let's use it." Mia Song, who had been working around the clock, reported on the fleet's condition. Our resources are stretched thin and the ships need repairs, but we can hold for another engagement. We've set up additional automated defense grids around Zoloria's orbit. Simon Key, his eyes fixed on the tactical display, added, "The Krath will likely attempt to break through our perimeter in a full frontal assault. It's their last chance to regain footing." Leo nodded, formulating his plan. "We'll meet their assault with everything we have. But this time, we'll prepare a contingency. If we can draw them into Zoloria's upper atmosphere, we can use the planet's magnetic field to disrupt their fleet." The plan was met with nods of approval, but the weight of what they were proposing hung heavily in the air. The risk was enormous, and the potential cost high. As Fleet 17 prepared, Leo took a moment to address his crew over the comm system. "This could be our final stand. Each of you has shown courage beyond measure. No matter what happens, know that you've made a difference." The Krath fleet arrived, darkening the skies above Zoloria with their numbers. As the battle commenced, Fleet 17 executed Leo's plan flawlessly, managing to lure the Krath into the designated zone. Jax, piloting his fighter with deft precision, led several Krath destroyers directly into a trap where Mia's defense grids waited. Explosions lit up the sky, but the Krath kept coming, relentless. The battle raged fiercely, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. In a critical moment, a Krath dreadnought broke through the defensive line, heading straight for Zoloria's capital. Realizing the dreadnought would cause untold destruction if it reached the planet, Leo made a split-second decision. "All ships, focus fire on that dreadnought. We cannot let it pass." The Endeavor and its sister ships converged on the Krath dreadnought, barraging it with all they had. But it was not enough. The dreadnought's shields held, and it continued its deadly advance. Seeing no other option, Leo grasped the gravity of the moment. With a heavy heart, he turned to his crew. "Prepare for a full-speed collision course with the dreadnought. We'll give Zoloria a fighting chance." The crew looked at him, eyes wide with a mix of fear and respect. Jax was the first to respond, his voice cracking slightly. "Captain, there must be another way." Leo shook his head, his decision firm. "This is the only way. Evacuate the ship. Get to the life pods. That's an order." As the crew reluctantly obeyed, Leo piloted the Endeavor directly toward the dreadnought. In those final moments he thought of Earth, of the people of Zoloria, and of the crew who had become his family. The collision was cataclysmic. The Endeavor sacrificed itself spectacularly, taking the Krath dreadnought down in a blinding explosion that saved Zoloria's capital from destruction. In the aftermath, as the remaining Krath forces retreated in disarray, the people of Zoloria looked up in awe and sorrow, mourning the brave souls aboard the Endeavor. Leo Mercer's name and that of his crew became synonymous with heroism and sacrifice. While the war was not yet over, the battle won that day marked a significant turning point. The Krath would think twice before attacking again, and Zoloria, bolstered by the courage of Fleet 17, prepared to defend its freedom with newfound resolve. In the aftermath of the devastating sacrifice made by Captain Leo Mercer and the crew of the USS Endeavor, the remaining ships of Fleet 17 regrouped under the command of Lieutenant Jax, who had been appointed as the interim captain. The mood among the fleet was somber yet resolute, as they honored their fallen comrades and prepared to continue their defense of Zoloria. Back on Zoloria, the people mourned and celebrated the heroes of Earth in equal measure. Monuments were quickly erected in major cities, commemorating the selfless act that had saved countless lives. Captain Mercer's name was spoken with reverence and became a symbol of the bravery and resilience that had been shown by the weakest of Earth's fleets. Jax stood before the newly appointed Council of Zoloria and Earth's remaining senior officers. His voice was steady, but the weight of his new responsibility was palpable. "Captain Mercer taught us that it's not the size of the ship in the fight, but the size of the fight in the ship. We will continue to stand with Zoloria to ensure that this sacrifice was not in vain." General Tyla, who had become a close ally, nodded in agreement. "Your fleet, though called the weakest, has shown the greatest heart. Zoloria owes its peace to your courage. We pledge to stand beside you, to honor the legacy of those who fought for us." As reconstruction efforts began, the Zolorians worked closely with the humans, sharing technology and strategies to fortify their planet against future threats. The alliance between Earth and Zoloria strengthened, becoming a beacon for other worlds in the galaxy who sought to resist the tyranny of the Krath. Mia Song, now the chief engineer of the fleet, led the effort in developing new defensive systems. "We're not just rebuilding, we're innovating. she declared during a briefing. Using what we've learned from the Krath and from Captain Mercer, we'll make sure that no other world has to face what we did alone. Simon Key, promoted to commander, took on the role of developing new tactical doctrines based on the unconventional strategies that had proven so effective. Our tactics will be studied and replicated, he said. Leo's legacy will live on in every move we make from here on out. As the years passed, the story of Fleet 17 became a legendary tale across the galaxy. Training programs at Earth's Naval Academy included case studies and simulations of their battles, teaching new cadets the importance of adaptability, courage, and leadership under pressure. During the annual Remembrance Day on Zoria, Jax, now Admiral Jax, spoke to a crowd of thousands, both Zolorian and human, his words broadcasted across the galaxy. Today, we remember not just the heroes we lost, but also the spirit they embodied. Let us carry forward that spirit in all we do, as we continue to stand guard over this peace we've fought so hard to achieve. The legacy of Fleet 17, once deemed Earth's weakest, endured as a testament to the fact that even the smallest force could change the course of history. Their story was taught to future generations not just as a lesson in warfare, but as a profound narrative on the power of unity and the indomitable strength of the human spirit, paired with the resolve of their alien allies. In classrooms and academies, in stories told to children at night, the tale of the fleet that saved a planet continued to inspire hope and determination across the stars.